meeting. It kind of deals with some privacy issues that I don't want to, I have to have everybody's permission. So far I have, but I want to make sure that everything privacy wise goes okay with recording. So here we go. Super simple terms just to remember for migration. Really, it's a bunch of terminology that you need, the push and the pull factors. Again, push factors are any reason why a person wants to leave an area, and pull factors are reasons why people usually want to go to an area. The thing is that they want you to know that the push factors tend to be much more negative because, again, they're making you want to leave, and the pull factors are perceived to be better. Like if I'm in some other country, country X, and I want to move to country Y, and I think that it's going to be so much better in country Y, that the grass is always greener on the other side. There's going to be more jobs. My life will be better there. Your pull factors tend to always be perceived to be better. And yeah, it might be true. You might have a better life, but just FYI, that's kind of what they want you to know about those. If you do take a look, you can see a list of common push and pull factors. Jobs, or the economy, is like the #1 push pull factor that you're going to see out there. All right, so taking a look at the next one. You do need to know, and this could very well be a FRQ kind of question. There are political, economic, cultural, social, environmental, demographic reasons why people do move, why there are push and pull factors, why there is migration in the first place. So obviously for political, you could have persecution, you could have government regime changes. By the way, I heard Kim Jong-un might be on his way out, or not alive anymore. And by the way, if he does pass away, I believe power goes on to his sister, who is not the nicest person in the family. Just a little fun fact. Okay, so anyway, so regime change, government change, instability in the government, persecution, all of those are political reasons for movement, for migration. Economic factors, like I said, lack of jobs, money, etc. Environmental issues is becoming a very big deal. So desertification, like in Africa, is causing a ton of people to move. They can't farm. Environmental degradation, issues like flooding, sea level rise, that kind of stuff is really starting to become issues in which are causing people to end up having to migrate. So I would take a look at certain environmental factors as far as migration goes. Really important. Cultural, a lot of people tend to move for language, religion. Maybe they religiously are not, I saw that, religiously are not getting they don't have a very large religious group that they're with. They don't feel connected, so they want to move somewhere where they will be. I actually posted that thing about looking at North Korea with Kim Jong-un and all the satellite images. I posted that video. It's really, really crazy. I'll get to more on that later. I mean, how crazy. And then demographically, just people move if there's a lot of people, like overpopulation, could be underpopulation. We'll get to that in a little bit. Unbalanced sex ratios. So like if you had something like in China where the one child policy occurred and there's that now imbalance of more men than women, that's a push factor. That's a major reason for men to want to move out of China, because they can't get married. They can't find a wife. There's just way too many men and not enough women. And that's something I actually posted a video on our regular website, which I heard was blocked on our computers. But it was a Vice video talking all about the marriage markets that they have in China, because they just cannot get enough women for the men. It's something that is becoming a big problem. So there are several issues for, or what we call catalyst reasons for migration. And that to me looks like a possible FRQ. It's got politics, environmentals, issues, economic, social issues, et cetera, et cetera. So I would take a look at those. These look at on your own time, but they are actual examples of everything I just spoke of. Economic push and pull factors, things that have actually occurred, political, demographic, social, environmental. So please, 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 when I do post this, they do want you to know examples of everything. So make sure that you do take a look at these examples. I did get them straight out. Uh-oh, what's wrong with the audio? Do I not sound like my normal awesome self? Let's see. Um, okay. So the other thing was, what was I gonna say? Oh, I got all of these from the, okay, I'm sorry, I thought it was on there. I saw all of these in the AMSCO book, so I just pulled all these examples from there. So that's what I would say. Just take a look at AMSCO and read these examples. Um, Types of migration, there's forced and there's voluntary. So this is just like a little flow chart as far as like, you know, what forced is, voluntary, what it usually ends up with, things that are associated with. And the thing with the FRQs that they're going to give you on the test is they're going to want you to connect every unit. So like they may talk about migration, forced migration, where do most forced migrants end up? How does migration impact the economy? Economy, I think, shows up, the word economy shows up like 120 times in the course outline, so keep that in mind. So let's talk a little bit about, I think we start with voluntary. So voluntary migration, obviously these are people that move because they want to, it's voluntary. Types of voluntary migration they want you to know. Transnational has come up a lot. So transnational migrants or trans migrants, these are people that basically go across like countries' borders. They go internationally, but they kind of keep a very strong association with the home country. So like, let's say there are people who are in the, and this is a terrible, I guess, example to use in the time of a pandemic, but like if you have ever been on a cruise, a lot of the workers are from the Philippines and they will move to another country. They will get work on one of the cruise ships. They start sending remittances back home. That would be one. Another could be people going from the United States to Canada. Maybe because they're moving across the border, they're working on something in Canada, but they're like research and they're sending information back home. Or it could be people from Mexico going to the United States, working here for a certain amount of time and sending money back home. So just keep in mind, transnational migration, this new term, has just kind of come up, and it's been around for a while. It's just giving terminology to that, keeping a connection to the home country, if that makes sense. Transhumanists, we've already gone over, but basically that is the oldest form of migration. It is moving from one place to another, usually with livestock. Please do know what a guest worker is. Again, the United States has a lot of guest workers. Germany has a lot of guest workers. A lot of them actually are from Turkey. And also know, as far as like movement and migration, the most common movement around the entire world is going from rural areas to urban areas. Most important thing on this slide. So rural, farmland, urban, cities. And that is starting really just from the Industrial Revolution, because it started going from a lot of farm area into the cities, because that's where the factories were. Yeah, and all the way, like in the whole Gulf states, that basically with the UAE, the whole Gulf region basically is having that. Guest workers are commonly going there to build a whole bunch of stuff because of the fact that their population just isn't large enough. And we'll get there too, but very, very good one there. And that's what I mean by connection. This is also really, really interesting. So there is internal migration obviously going on. You could have international migration, country to country, but you can also move within a country. There's two kinds, interregional, intra-regional. Don't get too hung up on those. Basically, it just means like, usually the movement is rural to urban, right? So here's the thing. In some countries, there are suburbs, these wonderful things where houses are all spaced out and you need a car to get around. If you take a look at the image, we didn't get to this part in Unit 7, but if you look at the image in the center, you see all those tall buildings. That's like the city, like downtown Fort Lauderdale or downtown Miami. Right outside the city, you're going to see some factories and some housing. But then further away, like you take 95 or the Turnpike out, then you start to get to places like the suburbs, Coconut Creek and Coral Springs and Deerfield. The major movement is now people going in places where there are suburbs, like the United States. A lot of the movement has been going from the inner cities out to the suburbs. You get more bang for your buck, basically. You get more space for your money. A lot of families moved from these cities into the suburbs. But this is not to confuse you, but one thing that's starting to happen now is a lot of the younger generations are starting to abandon the suburbs and going back into the cities, because you don't need a car, and we seem to be the generation that doesn't like cars and would much rather walk everywhere. But really, it's when people are going from the central cities and moving out towards the suburbs. That's really what intra-regional is. So don't get too confused on that. Internal migration basically is when people are just moving within a country. That's all. Okay. This is just showing you migration of like internal migration in the United States. As far as like the largest migration internally in the US is something called from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt. So if you look at all the red lines on this map, basically, where the center is kind of like Detroit, Michigan. So the Rust Belt is this area up in the Northeast where and then like the Midwestish area that had all these factories that were doing so well for a very long time. But then it started, like the United States started to shift from a stage 3 industrialized economy to more of a stage 4, where most of us are not working in factories. So the factories became abandoned, and it became really expensive to live up in the northern region. So people started to move in droves from the Rust Belt to what we call the Sun Belt, or the southern states. So if you look at all those lines, the majority of them are going downwards in some way, shape, or form. The Sun Belt is basically like the middle of California downwards, like the lower half of the United States. So it doesn't just mean like the South. It means like the Sun Belt is like the lower portion of the United States. It would be Arizona, New Mexico, parts of California, Louisiana, it'd be Oklahoma, et cetera, all the way over. Okay. So it's called from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt region. As far as Brazil and internal migration, again, a lot of people are going, moving into places that are more centralized. Let's see. Okay, two other really important terms are chain and step migration. So just make sure you know what they are. Chain migration is any time that people are moving where people of similar ethnic groups have moved. And step migration is when you're going like from one place to another, then another before reaching your final destination. So I would just kind of know those terms. Other than that, I don't really know what else they could do with that. With forced migration, and this is important. Forced migration is when people are literally forced to migrate. They have no choice in the matter. This is what results in a lot of times people that are going to become refugees, people that are going to try to seek asylum, people that are internally displaced. You can take a look at some of the caused the forced migration throughout history. So human trafficking is a major one that they're focusing on as far as forced migration. That's basically modern day slavery that's going on. Any kind of, obviously the largest forced migration was the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, that kind of a thing. He's forced migration. Hi. Yes, hi. You want to say hello? Come here, say hi. Okay, this is going to be forced migration of Jaden going into his room soon. Hi.
That's cultural confusion.
So basically, with forced, we don't want to talk about forced migration to you, huh? Because that's not really nice. But you can take a look at all the examples that correspond. Bye now. Okay. So then he does. He's my little AP human. So just make sure that you do know examples of forced migration. I don't push things. That should be on there. If they do start to talk about China, if you take a look at where it says the Three Gorges Dam on there, that is the largest dam being built in the world. It is in China, and they actually forced a whole bunch of people off of their land to move. So that's one of them. Okay, so this was a map of just the transatlantic slave trade. So again, forced migration. And where the refugees are coming from. So again, this was a test question before, but the continent with the largest amount of refugees living in it and IDPs will be the continent of Africa, the international sex trade. That's literally the human trafficking. That's human trafficking. But this is where refugees are located, where they're stuck basically. As far as where they're going to, Many of them are trying to go to places in Europe. Many of them are trying to go to places in the United States. Australia was actually a destination place for many refugees. So this is where refugees are coming from. If you look at your course outline, they will mention a couple of refugee migration streams that you should know. Make sure you know that Northern Africa is starting to produce a lot of refugees. Sudan, a lot of refugees. Yeah, I mean, I would say anywhere Afghanistan, Syria. Syria has a huge refugee problem. The Rohingya refugees over in Myanmar, so that's over in Southeast Asia, has a very large amount of refugees. So please make sure that you know all the places really where refugees, exactly, Angola, anywhere that refugees are, especially the DRC, make sure you know where they're coming from. Hi, Jane. Okay. All right. So then, if you take a look at this, where are they seeking asylum? So make sure you remember what an asylum seeker is. They are people trying to get safety in another country. If you're applying, and again, go get asylum in your room, man. All right, so if you do take a look, a lot of them are going to try to go to MDCs for asylum. If you take a look, the United States does have a lot, but don't forget, refugees, like part of the definition is they can't go far. So if they're taking their first steps on foot, they're going to try and go to the closest place to get asylum status. Now, if you take a look at Europe, this is a major deal. So a lot of the people going from like the Middle Eastern countries are trying to get over towards Germany, towards the United Kingdom, towards France. They're trying to seek asylum there. But what's starting to happen is the European Union, supranational organization, they are starting to try and say, hey guys, we're gonna basically try and stop you guys from coming into certain countries. So they're trying to force people to seek asylum in countries they pass through. In fact, the United States just passed a law saying that they don't want people who are coming from the Mexican border into the United States to try and seek asylum here. They're saying if they're coming from like South America or Central America, they have to seek asylum in one of the countries that they pass through before they even get to the United States. So yeah, Turkey and Greece are major places. What, sweetie? Hi. He wants to say hi. You want to say hi? Yep. Okay, bye. You want ice cream? Dad, give him ice cream. Okay. So then as far as like barriers, now this is important. With all that being said, voluntary force, etc., and take a look over your notes. With migration, moving, forced, whatever, don't forget that there are barriers to migration. Those are called intervening obstacles. Again, this could very well be an FRQ. Intervening obstacles are basically anything that stops you from going to the destination that you're heading towards. They could be anything from cultural, demographic, and economic, environmental, political. It could be something like cultural, where people could be xenophobic. If you don't know what that means being anti some sort of immigrant group, being afraid of some kind of ethnic group. For demographic, that could be something like a quota. You know, you could have immigration quotas. The United States, we definitely work on quotas. Economic, that could be maybe you run out of money before you get to your destination. Environmental, this could be something like, and this is happening a lot. You go from, let's say, Mexico to the United States. You try and cross the border. And this is the reason why the wall will not work. We talked about this before, but there's a desert there. And it's almost, it's called Death Valley, okay? So as far as trying to cross this desert, most people don't make it. That would be an environmental obstacle. Trying to cross a sea, you know, anywhere that's too difficult, that could be environmental, that could be an intervening obstacle. Political, if you can't get a visa, if they're not allowing you to apply for asylum, if, you know, they've closed the borders, all that kind of stuff. You do need to know what intervening obstacles are. You do also have to know the effects, because this could be an FRQ. What effects does any kind of migration, voluntary or forced? That means refugees. This was an FRQ before. What effects does that have on the country of origin, like where they left, and what effect does it have on the country they're going to? So I listed a few of them for you guys here, and it kind of depends on the country, but Obviously, if the people are going to your country, you are going to end up with people that are going to strain your resources. They are going to take work usually for less pay. Now, this depends on the type of migrant coming in. And we'll get to brain drain in a moment. But a lot of times they will take work that's kind of under the table, especially if they can't get a visa. And that might lower the pay for everybody else. As far as like, I don't know, conflicts and stuff. There can be cultural conflicts, but basically that's where you're starting to get this whole immigration talk. In fact, at one point, they were talking about how like migrants were coming across the border, bringing in disease. I don't know. Basically, you get a lot of xenophobia with that, and it's unfortunate because that should not be true. The world was not built with any borders whatsoever, but it happened. But it happened. So that could be one of the effects. Public services could be an effect. Building enough houses, etc. But there's absolutely wonderful things that can happen from migration. You get culture, you get food, you get languages introduced to your country. You get new ways of looking at things. You get new information from the people that are coming from other countries. I mean, that could be absolutely phenomenal. You get new taxpayers. You get new contributing people to the economy, to the workforce. But also for the country that they left, don't forget about brain drain. Major term. And this is where people sometimes lose their best and their brightest MDCs. They lose their young workers to a lot of the MDCs. Remittances, though, also get brought back to the home country a lot of times. And let's see, there's also something called counter migration, which we'll get to in just a moment. But a lot of times when migrants leave their home country, if there's like a large migration stream, sometimes people move back, and we'll get to that in a moment. So again, we'll get to that in a second. This I didn't talk too much about in class because it was really easy to understand, but like most people, and this is called Zielinski's model of mobility. Most people, what is the matter? Most people run like that. Okay. So most people tend to go from LDCs to MDCs. Okay, the movement is usually not from MDC to LDC. Zielinski's model is that most people tend to go from an LDC to an MDC. I have no idea. Ravenstein's laws of migration, you need to know every single one of them. Okay, so I listed them for you. They're in every review that you could possibly imagine. I'm not reading every single one to you. I don't know if you got the ice cream, we'll find out. But just make sure that you do take a look at all of Ravenstein's migration laws. If you look at the very, very last one, it does talk about that counterflow of migration. So every time there's a group of migrants going from one place to another, there's always going to be a few people that go back to the home country. So that's what that's talking about. You will have to know historical migrations, both of the US and the world, and current migrations. So I gave you guys some examples here. Some things could be like the Irish potato famine, a group of people came over. You're gonna need to know where some people settled in the United States. You're gonna need to know, let's see, when people in like Central Europe basically went over to the United States. So you do have to know different United States migrations. And if you take a look at this map, and I will leave this file for you guys, these are all different migration streams. No, don't study everything about every single one of them. Most of them you've heard of before. There was a war in Europe, so that's why a lot of people left. There were, let's see, a lot of people from South and Central America have gone to the United States. There's that migration stream. So you guys do need to take a look at just different historical migration streams, that's all. Right now, these are the current migration streams. These are the most crowded migration streams on the planet. This was just taken from National Geographic. So if you take a look at this, you can see where most people are going, where they're ending up, and where the most crowded migration streams are. So make sure that you know different historical migrations, migration routes, why people are migrating. Is it forced? Is it voluntary? If people do move, are they more likely to move to a city or a rural area? What's an intervening obstacle? What's an intervening opportunity? Something good that stops a migrant? But a lot of it was more vocab words than anything else. So again, take a look when you get a chance. And I did also print these out into a nice little manual, but this is your topic outline. I highlighted everything. If there is a word in there that you don't understand, you need to ask me because it will show up in one way, shape, or form on the test. But basically, we've gone over just about every single thing in there. We will start with culture next time. And I'm going to try and run through that very, very quickly. But don't forget that culture has pop, folk, language, religion, that kind of stuff. But it's not going to be super, super detailed. On tonight, I'm going to that webinar all about your tests, the AP test they're going to give, which will be 2 FRQs. I don't know the format of them yet. The FRQs are going to only be on information on units 1 through 5, which worked out nicely. But you will have to be able to connect units. So like I might say, how come there's a migration stream from India to Pakistan? And you'd have to know. I might ask you, why are there people trying to go from, I don't know, Morocco to Spain? Why are there a bunch of people trying to come from Central America to the United States? Like, I could ask that kind of stuff. FRQs will have a ton of different information in them. I will see if I can post everything for you guys either on Teams or on Canvas. I don't know how to work Canvas very well if you haven't figured that out. I heard my website's blocked. I tried to get it unblocked on the school computers. That's where I have everything, and I can't just keep moving everything over. And again, just to repeat, my job is not to get your Pinnacle to look good. My job is to get you to pass that test and then worry about Pinnacle looking good, okay? So keep in mind that everything that I'm giving you is for your benefit right now to pass the AP exam, because no college is going to look at Pinnacle in Q4 and say, wow, they got an A, but they didn't pass the exam. I bet they did really, really well. Every single person in this entire world right now is not in school. So the College Board has negotiated this test to basically say whether or not you had your year basically worth it. It doesn't mean Q4 grade is not going to show up on your report card. It will, and it will go into your GPA, but I promise you that if you get an A fourth quarter, which you should, that colleges aren't going to be like, oh my God, they got an A fourth quarter. They must know everything. No, they're going to look at your AP exam. So there's 2 FRQs. The timing we've gone over, all that information is also in Canvas. So go through that. And then I will see you guys either tomorrow or the day after. I'm not quite sure yet, but you do need to look ahead at Unit 3. If you guys have any questions, you can stay and ask me. If you guys are good to go, you may go ahead and leave. I'm going to stop the recording right now. And stop the presentation. How do I stop the recording? I have no idea. Okay, so go ahead if you guys are good to go. It was good to see